Welcome back, everybody. You got Will and I Man here from the Block Runner, and today we're going to talk about something that's more aligned with our day-to-day activities and continue with this closer conversation about the metaverse and kind of building what the future of digital space is going to be like.
Yeah, just stumbled up on our radar. I don't even remember how it stumbled now at this point. I mean, we spend all day on Twitter, right? And we follow a lot of like Metaverse / NFT influencers within that space. So this project just kind of entered our radar. Mm-hmm. And once we started to investigate a little bit further, it's like, holy crap, we see a lot of similarities between our thinking and what they're presenting as like their vision, right?
Yeah, and so we started our podcast in early 2019 in the heat of the bear market. And pretty soon after we started it, we stumbled upon Maddie talking about Decentraland and land NFTs then, and we got hooked. I mean, we got so hooked that we got my brother hooked, and he's a developer, and ended up making an application, a D app for the Metaverse, specifically in Decentraland. And so ever since then, I mean, we've been basically just trying to understand the space enough to recognize the problems. And the Metaverse has gigantic problems, big problems that are not exactly obvious when just taking a look at any metaverse. And one of the biggest foundational problems that we see is an economic foundation, like in the sense that a lot of people have sunk cost in land, right? And in the context of Decentraland, for example, the biggest metaverse, which is roughly $1 billion, if not more right now, in the sense that you sink your cost in purchasing this land, but then you realize it's like, oh, in order to make custom content, I need to essentially be a developer, or I need to know how to use Blender or these other 3D modeling applications.
And when you say land, just to clarify, he means digital land, not real physical land. A lot of you guys watching probably never even heard of the concept of owning virtual land. That is like a premise of the metaverse, right?
Yes.
It's an existence on the internet where users own essentially like the bandwidth of development. Like think of land as a representation of like a page of a website, like a web page. Mm-hmm. Like in order to build on the internet, you need like a website, you need like a hosting service to host that website page, right? The metaverse is the same concept, only we've kind of like 3D-ified it.
Yep.
The land parcels itself are the web pages, like the developer hosting space. Right. So
that's such a good point. I mean, if you extrapolate that, you just take a look at the internet, right? The internet was GeoCities, right? It was like one of the early applications where anybody can make a website, right? It was GeoCities. Yeah. And then after that, it was like social media pages, right? Like Facebooks, right? And so that is generally how you built your presence on the internet. And now there's tools like Webflow. I'm forgetting a lot of the ones. Squarespace, where anyone could build a website, right? It's almost a drag and drop type of applications to build a site. Mm-hmm. And so now the metaverse is suffering from the same problems, is that you essentially need to be a developer to make content for the metaverse.
Yeah.
And that is largely not sustainable, right? It didn't work well for making websites, right? That's why Squarespace and these other ones are becoming very successful, because fundamentally you need a website in order to have commerce in today's age, right? Pretty soon.
To attract users.
Pretty soon you're going to need a metaverse presence to attract users. Right, mm-hmm. Because a lot of people are spending a lot of time on Minecraft and Fortnite, and eventually they're going to be spending a lot more time in the metaverse once things are a little bit more fleshed out, right? And so these problems that exist in the metaverse aren't exactly obvious, which is why we're here. Why this is what we're building, and so we saw these guys, and we're like, hey, these guys are talking about exactly the stuff that we've been talking about for a year.
Yeah.
And it's like, cool. Now people are starting to recognize like some of the issues in the metaverse and starting to build out these infrastructure pieces that the metaverse is going to need to really populate it and really get it to Ready Player One level of content.
Yeah. And there's like a lot of like exterior factors too, to support people's desire to want to like enter the same mission space that we've been in on, like stuck in for the last year and a half, right? Like the fact that Axie has done what it's done, it's achieved.
Yes.
Well, maybe thought is the unachievable, right? It's outpacing Bitcoin and Ethereum right now as far as like fees within the network. Think how crazy that is. A fucking game is beating all of Bitcoin, Ethereum. it's totally lapsed all of DeFi, like revenue generation. Like Axie has done it. It's killed the whole game. Now all of a sudden everybody's like sitting there scratching their heads, like, where did this thing come from? Why is it so big?
Yes.
Like, where do we go from here? Like, especially if you're a business-minded type individual, which a lot of developers are, like talented ones, right? They want to figure out, how do I seize this new opportunity, this new frontier, right? So that's, I think, things like the metaverse, things like play to earn, blockchain gaming, all this stuff, all of a sudden becomes the most attractive and alluring sector in the space, right? So whenever I saw NYFT,
NIFT,
Nifty Island, Nifty Studio, whatever,
Nifty Island.
Yeah, it brought back a lot of memories of like when DeFi first started to become realized. You started to see the yams and the sushis and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like look at the website. It's goofy as hell, right? Like, it doesn't look like anything serious is being built here.
Yeah.
And when you dive a little bit deeper, the things they're saying is pretty fucking serious.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So this is a product from a studio called Nifty Studio.
Yeah.
And the things that they're saying are the exact same things that we've been saying for over a year now, right? It's for example, the NFT minting DApp equipped with creator tools and templates built for metaverse builders. That's exactly what MetaZone is, right? The exact same thing.
Yeah.
And so now what we're recognizing here is I think the sentiment is changing as far as the bullishness in what sector the crypto space is heading towards. And I think that sentiment is shifting towards the metaverse. We got CNN, Fox Business. We have huge investments into the metaverse happening right now. And I think this is going to be the next sector that's really going to explode within the next 3 to 6 months. And so now we're calling it here. We're going to start seeing a ton of investors getting into like metaverse type projects, games, things of that nature. And we're going to see these for the next 3 to 6 months. And these are the tokens that are really going to take off.
100% agreed. Yeah, and I like all these statements. I mean, because they align a lot in like the same wavelength of thought that we've been operating on for the last year and a half. But because they're trying to address the core critical issues that we've already identified, right? Like, it's tough getting an economy started, right? Oh, yeah. Just imagine, like, that statement alone is like, think about all the things that means, right? Like, getting the engine of economy like figured out. Like, I mean, that's a difficult process, right? And that's kind of like what platforms like Decentraland they've posed that challenge to the community, right? Like, a lot of people ask over the last couple of years, how come Decentraland isn't focused on solving these core issues, right? Well, I mean, if you delve a little bit deeper into like their white paper, or I guess the philosophy behind what they think the metaverse is supposed to be, it's a decentralized ecosystem, right? It's community governed, it's community driven. Mm-hmm. So I think they're kind of sitting around waiting for actors within the ecosystem to figure out how to solve these problems.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I think we're starting to get to that point. Decentraland being like the biggest opportunity because it's been around the longest. It's like it's the original metaverse within the blockchain space. Mm-hmm. But we're going to start to see a lot of attempts. Let's call it that. Like Nifty Island is its own metaverse on paper right now, right? So I'm assuming this means a land sale is coming any day now, more than likely.
Yep.
So first they need to do is build a community, get people to understand what it is they want to build, right? And then once they have that solid community, they're going to offer, 10,000 parcels of Nifty island land.
Nifty Islands, yeah. So it goes back to the reason why we're showing Decentral Games here, and another huge project in Decentraland is Ethermon, is that let's take a look at what's happening within the biggest metaverse right now, Decentraland. We have two projects, Decentral Games and we have Ethermon. They both raised a ton of money. They both have a token, and they both need a token in order to sustain an ecosystem within the metaverse. And so we're saying is like, this is fundamentally what every single project that wants to be in the metaverse needs to do in order to have that sustainability. And so that's the point of MetaZone, right? We want to focus on creating a platform so that anyone that comes in that wants to exist in the metaverse in some economical way, in some fundamentally sustainable way, they need these components, right? 721s, 1155s, and the ERC20s. All these things need to exist and need to be quickly accessible by game developers who don't necessarily know how to blockchain, right? Blockchain is complicated.
That's right.
And so those tools are necessary in order to build out any metaverse, whether it's your own created metaverse or one that already exists. And so Decentral Games killing it, Ethermon killing it in terms of like building that ecosystem of sustainability. That is what's necessary. Sustainability is important because you want long-term projects, because if you have a long-term project, you have a higher likelihood that people are going to interact with your project, invest in the project, and continue using it for a long period of time, rather than just, something where it's like a quick flip and like, you don't know if these projects are going to like fail, right? So sustainability is huge. That's why we keep talking about it. That's why everything that we've done so far is focused on that. But now with Nifty Island, like other people are starting to see this, right? They're starting to sing the same songs that we're singing. And it's good, because now we're going to see a lot more activity, a lot more eyeballs, a lot more developers like starting to recognize like, yeah, this is a big sector, and they're going to spend a lot more resources on it.
Yeah. I think, it's pretty early to call like how successful a project like Nifty Island will become. And that's you could say the same about any metaverse, but I think for sure I've seen enough to at least claim, or at least expect, that we're gonna start seeing a lot more of these. And just like whenever we first found PokerStarter or something like that, right? We made the same predictions and assumptions, like, okay, we just identified IDOs as the next new funding mechanism within the crypto sector, right? So we're going to see tons of these things spawning.
Yeah.
And what happened? Literally the last 6 months has been fueled by the boom of IDOs.
Yeah, that's right. So
here we are. We're witnessing a new benchmark, I guess, of like, okay, people all of a sudden are interested in wanting to spin up their own metaverse, because it's not difficult to conceptualize a metaverse and to like build a community around the idea of a metaverse. It's much more difficult to execute on the vision.
Yeah.
But as we know, in the crypto space, a lot of manias, they don't come from execution. They come from speculation and hype and like, collective belief, community, all that stuff.
But you know what? We have to take a page out of Axie. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of speculation, a lot of hype. That's really what garners like a community. But Axie didn't have a whole lot of hype back in 2018 when they were launching their Axie. They had a vision for a game, they executed, and now they're smoking everybody. They're smoking every single sector in the crypto space.
Yeah, because they're one of the rare examples of they executed on that vision they set for themselves 3 years ago, right? Like they also started their mission during the heat of the bear market, right, when nobody was paying attention to the space, right? So they took a huge risk, but they thought they had a good idea, the good product. They thought people would be interested in this.
For sure.
And they were right. But it took a long time for that to be realized, right? Because the market, usually the market's always behind. That's the point, right? Like the innovators come first. They lay down the frameworks, the groundwork. Then the market eventually catches up, and then they FOMO. You know what I mean? And then they realize like, okay, we're getting a little out of control. We're going to sell everything. And then we're going to find the next thing to FOMO about, right?
Yeah. So so what are we really saying here? I think the most important thing, I think it's a lot of things. It's like Axie. It's, what's going on with the metaverse. Like, how do you sustain a project within the metaverse? Like, all these things are important. But when it goes and you compare like the ideologies of what Axie's done with what Pancake Swap or Yam and all these like quick spun up projects that exist, like the focus is what is the fundamental aspects of what these projects are trying to achieve. And when you look at Nifty Island or the studio behind Nifty Island, it's about the creator tools and templates built for metaverse builders. Like in the same sense that we're saying the exact same thing. Right, they're going after the tools to help construct the metaverse properly.
A creator economy, because a true metaverse isn't built from the top up or top down. Yes. Yeah, that's just another game. We're used to that process.
Yes,
we've existed in that virtual world for the last 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah,
we're building a new virtual world that's actually like
from the ground up.
It's exactly. It's actually organically grown and it's governed by its users, just like life, there's
if you own like
real economics.
If you take a real city and you look at the different blocks in that city, for sure that the same company did not build every single block, right?
Exactly.
You have multiple builders, multiple construction companies, multiple entities involved in the construction of a city. And the same thing has to happen in the metaverse. Why? Because it's extremely complicated and expensive to do it on your own, right?
Yeah, that, and again, like no one company owns all the land.
That's right.
Of a city.
That's right.
Right. I mean, unless you're like, some kind of communist regime, then you can do whatever the fuck you want,
Yeah.
But I mean, we're trying to build a collaborative ecosystem, right? Like, okay, like the users have the rights to own this land, but in order to figure out like what's the most optimal economic model, it requires everyone's collaboration, right? Like somebody has to play a role within that economy. Like everybody has their roles.
Yeah.
So so what are we saying? I don't know. I guess our passion is just kind of like spilling out.
Yeah, it is. It is
like for everyone to see, because like we're hitting that inflection zone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because we've been wondering like, when is the metaverse going to take off for 2 years now?
2 years now, yeah.
And now we're finally starting to see like too many indicators, right? Like it's starting to become overwhelming. Like, oh shit! Like the reality is like hitting us right in our face.
Yeah.
Like
and ultimately, this is why you guys are watching. I mean, you guys need to stay ahead as to what the sentiment is, and it's not easy to pick up if you're just like reading around in Twitter. Like you don't really know which sector is like has like the bullish momentum into something that's going to explode. But it takes understanding the problems in specific sectors to understand the solutions and who are building the solutions. So shout out to Nifty Studios and Nifty Islands, because they're definitely saying the right things. And so shout out to those guys. They're doing a great job. I hope these guys are successful. This is exactly what needs to be happening in the metaverse. I think what we're saying here is we're going to see a lot of this happening, a lot more.
Yeah.
This is great. This is good to see. You always want to see people building in the right kind of context, because that's how you know you're doing it right.
Experimenting, right? Like, nobody knew where DeFi was going to go, like in the beginning, but they knew, like everybody, there's a collective vibe, like an energy of like, dude, like there's something here to this. Like we're on the verge of like disrupting something, right? And I think pretty soon more and more people are going to figure that out, like in the metaverse sector. Like, dude, there's a lot of, if you think what Axie has done is like impressive, I mean, it is. Can't discredit Axie in any way, but applying like that same impactfulness of like building a game economy and actually injecting that into a real metaverse, like
that's something else.
That has ridiculous implications that people should be writing like freaking university theses about, like economic thesis.
Yeah,
like what does the world look like 30, 40 years from now with like a vibrant economic metaverse? Like, what happens? How disruptive is that to our real world economy? It could completely topple it. Eventually.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, think about it. When you're constructing a metaverse in the truest sense, you're essentially building a country, and that country has citizens that are being. These citizens are accessing that country via the internet. Instead of flying to the country, you're instead traversing to that country via the internet. And so now you, as a metaverse builder, you have to think through levels of economic components that you wouldn't otherwise think about when just making a game. And so that's why this stuff is complicated. That's why it's so expensive to like make anything in the metaverse. And I mean, it's one of those sectors that, if done right, it's going to be competitive with DeFi and all these other like huge sectors in crypto. Yeah,
and competitive only in the sense that, I guess, competitive for attention, because like it is not a competition. DeFi was built for the metaverse, in my opinion.
Yeah, competitive in the sense that if you're an investor, you're like, okay, so do I stick with DeFi or metaverse? Like, in that sense. But DeFi is a component within the metaverse, right? You can inject DeFi in the metaverse. Like they're not separate competing components, right?
Yeah,
like they're competing for attention.
It wasn't built for the metaverse. What you said is better. It's a necessary component for the metaverse. Just like we need a banking and a financial infrastructure in the real world. Like we're going to need the same thing, these same tools in the virtual
100%.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it for us. Hopefully you guys had a good understanding of like what we think is going to be like the next boom in the crypto space, largely going to be metaverse based. And yeah, let us know what you think. Do you agree that the metaverse is going to be the big sector coming up, or do you think something else is going to explode? Let us know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and we will catch you in the next video.
Later.